back.
Hi.
I don't see the glow of your suntan, but I presume it's there. Okay, Brian is there as attending, and he is 12 hours out of sync with us right now, as is Anne Marie. We are being recorded by Bourne Community TV. So if anybody else wants to join in, the login coordinates are on the town calendar on today's date. You can log in via Zoom if you have to make any comments or questions. With that, I'm going to switch over and I'm going to go to the agenda here, and I'm not going to pull it up right now, but the first item of business is review of the minutes from February 3rd and February 6th.
I regret that I can't put them up on my iPad, but I sent them out to everybody. So if you have changes, let me know and I'll write them down and do it when I get home.
Okay. The only changes I have in the two of them, and I was trying to read this as I was going to bed last night, so I didn't jot it down, and I don't remember which or which. The word co-funding keeps getting captured by cursed autocorrect and made into confounding. So you might do a search for that and try to correct that in at least one of the locations. There was talk about the GAP 2 grant and a 20% confounding.
Yeah, I fixed that once or twice, and I think my AI wants to fix that for me, but I'll go back and fix it again before I send it out. Anything else?
I saw something on the February 3rd under correspondence. I think it was item 3, review public correspondence. Question from a member of the public to chair regarding TV service via Verizon Fios in Monument Beach. According to the rule, Verizon would have to offer this to every residence town-wide. And I don't know what rule you're talking about, because as far as I know, they don't have to. Because that would the only rule.
John, I could speak to that. I
Yeah.
could speak to that. So it's actually it's a provision in the contract
Yeah.
Comcast signed that says that the contract is non-discriminatory. So if another entity came in to offer cable service, they would have to
They have
sign
to
up
meet
to
those
the same
conditions.
thing that Comcast signed up to. And one of the provisions is that Comcast is required to deliver service to every resident in town.
That's true of cable, not.
So hold on, we got
Well,
to be
that's what
careful not to
we're
start a
talking about, John.
discussion
Fios
on the
TV.
minutes.
Wait,
Because
what?
so Jed, you're just repeating what was said at that meeting that you weren't there. I don't
Right.
want to take
We
this
can
any
discuss
further
that
than
later on when
the
we
minute.
get.
I just wanted to clarify the fact that I believe the rule is that has to do with cable television service, and that's why I was just saying that if you, and as far as I know, Verizon isn't offering cable in Bourne. So if you were to just specify saying that, I would just get the part about according to the you could say according to the rules for cable television, but
Yes.
I don't recall anybody saying that they had
Well,
to.
I thought this was about the people in Monument Beach that wanted to know why they can't get Fios TV.
Oh.
It was.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's kind of confusing because they're not offering Fios TV. That's why I was.
They're not, and that's why I put see later, because we had a longer discussion on that later on in the minutes. But I'll take your point and I'll clarify that a little
Okay,
bit.
that was it. That was all I saw. I just looked at that and went, that could be deceiving. That's all.
Got it. Anything else?
Yeah, one other point, discussing the amount of money that's at risk. We have a figure of $8 million, and I would put in parenthesis, just say SciTac estimate, okay? Because we don't know what that number is for Comcast, or if Future would have come from any other competitor.
Okay.
Okay. Just if somebody asks where that came from, just call it a SciTac estimate, and if they come back to us, then we'll
We can explain it.
the first order estimate that I think Brian took the lead on that. Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Anybody else have any?
February 6th one I'm looking at, I see a typo. Or
Okay. What's that?
if you go down to 4 old and ongoing and go to J, there's a V there. I think he meant there.
Don't have it in front of me, but I'll take your word for it. I'll check it.
Okay, any other changes? Okay, starting with February 3rd, I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
A second?
Second,
John seconds. All those in favor, voice vote. Wendy,
Aye.
John,
aye.
Jed, you weren't here, so I'm leaving you out. Brian,
Aye.
and Jed abstains. Okay. So it's unanimous except for Jed's abstention because of absence. Okay, February 6th, I'll entertain a motion to approve February 6th.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second,
Okay. All those in favor, starting with Wendy,
Aye.
John,
aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Bob, aye, and Jed abstains. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to
Oh, that's right.
review of public correspondence. Okay, Anne Marie, you had something?
I guess apparently Baldoni and MJ had conversation about what's happening with the bead program. And they want to get the money out as fast as they can and service, those identified as unserved or underserved, because that bead money could be at any point in time in jeopardy. So the quickest way to do that, according to MBI, was to award those monies to GAP, which we already know that, right? And I get why, but they are required to adhere to the B grant stipulations. I don't know the answer to, because of that, are they required to adhere to our letter of support? That's an answer neither MJ or I had. So I think it's just really unfortunate that it's not the level of service that we would like to see in the long term. But that was their thinking, and that was their reasoning, which we all know we agree that that's the reason why. So I think it's frustrating for us we have no control and no inside track to kind of figure out how that's going to all play out in the town. Now, Comcast does have a contract with that, and I've been thinking that, okay, so Comcast is going to come in. They get the 8 million. They're going to come in.
No,
and
it won't be 8 million.
whatever it
with
is. They're going to get the
yeah.
money. They're going to get some money, right? And they're going to serve the unserved and underserved delineations in the town, correct?
Not exactly.
No, that's not correct.
According-
There's data mismatches there's mismatches between the grant application, the award list, and the bead list. So no.
But
Anne Marie,
but here, what's on the bead list is what they have to adhere to, because that's the process.
No.
Because the GAP application, they exempted a lot of locations. So no, that wouldn't be true. The bead list is
That's what MJ was told.
Well, she
Well,
may have
not-
misunderstood that.
No, she didn't. She was
Well,
told that if they get monies from bead, they have to adhere to the bead regulations and grant requirements. They have to.
But
Well, first
I
of all,
think
GAP, they're not getting money from BEAD, they're getting money out of GAP. And secondly, there's a mismatch between what they said they'd cover in GAP and what MBI says they're covering, because they've exempted a bunch of locations. They don't have to, they aren't getting all of the unserved. Like each line of this is wrong in one way or another and requires extensive information to correct.
All right, so so when they come in, so my question is, and I'm trying to like grab something and have some kind of control over what Comcast does in the community. They have a contract with us. How, which means they have a contract with the town of Bourne, right? So when they come in and have to do this work, at what point can we have the conversation with the powers that be with Comcast in what's being rolled out? That's, I think, really important.
But if the terms of the grant state that
I
if
know,
you,
but I think
wait,
there
wait,
should be a sit down
I'm
because they
with
have a
you.
contract with Comcast, with the
If the
town.
terms of the grant say that BEAD money can't go to someplace where grant money went, gap money went, then yes, they're adhering to the contract or to the terms of the grant. That has nothing to do with the town's contract for whatever Comcast has contracted with the town. This is a separate issue. It has to do with the terms of the grants for GAP and BEAD. And I'm sorry she thinks that just because they're going to get money under GAP, then that means they're going to get all that money out of BEAD, because they're not.
That's what she was told, and I'm just
Yeah, no,
happy.
it's not right. It's
Time
Yeah.
out, everybody. I'd like to just move officially to old business here to discuss GAP and BEAD in the agenda. So thank you for relating the conversation that MJ had with you. She had something very similar, a similar conversation with me. I guess it was last Friday. Um, um, so moving forward, I think my particular opinion is that there are a lot of discrepancies between what Mr. Baldino and to some extent his staff say the regulations say versus what they
really are.
what latitude that they have to deviate from them. And we've got a number of different instances where they started out and say we are adhering and we're parroting back exactly the NTIA model regulations, follow through, and then frankly, when it doesn't suit their purposes, they deviate from them and say, well, we've made a management decision to do X, to do Y, and we can give you a list of those. So to some extent, MBI, my opinion is that they're being disingenuous. Okay, they're just they're doing what is expedient as opposed to perhaps what is best for the people that they're trying to serve. Now, again, having said that, just to remind everybody, I sent an email yesterday that had the 3 slides that MBI presented to their board with regard to the rollout for BEAD, and one of those had a map in there. And
Right.
if everybody looked at that, anything that is gray supposedly were totally served, and all the un and underserved were going to be served under GAP. And anything that wasn't, those other points were ones that they were going to try to serve or exempt some other way. The only ones in Bourne that I could see were perhaps 2 on Bassett Island. It looks like Bassett Island. And they
And
made,
for the record, MBI's map people have made frequent, persistent mistakes over and over again. So making a mistake with a data set is normal for MBI.
and they're going to be making decisions based on, in many cases, erroneous data. It's not deliberate. They're struggling to do this. The objective of their point on their item on their Tech Council board agenda yesterday was to get approval for a $600,000 contract to Accenture to manage the BEAD rollout. In any case, and they said that BEAD is doing this in states with much bigger programs than Massachusetts has, and that was approved. Anyway, the real issue is again, if as far as, oh, by the way, the other point they made is they said that those GAP grants had been approved before yesterday's meeting. So to the extent
But the rules are unpublished. The change of rules to divert BEAD to GAP isn't published. So that's, essentially it's not a it's not a
It's not
lawful
real.
contract. Yeah, it's not a lawful contract yet if they don't publish the change of
And
rules.
it's unclear whether anybody in the Tech Council board actually knows about that.
Mm.
So, right now, the other than withdrawing the letter of support, which frankly MBI can ignore, not tell their board, not tell anybody about it, and said thank you very much, but we're going ahead as we planned.
Well,
don't know
okay,
what else
can I just have just a point of clarity for me? Because I looked at that map yesterday and I went like, if I'm looking at this map properly, none of the virtually nothing that we put in, except one small area, is covered in that provisional map of locations. So Brian, what's going on? Did they knock out everything, or is this is bead only and not gap? I'm trying to grasp this.
that
I don't
map
have my
is
map on the
only.
screen because I usually look at the CSV version of this. So this would just be taking the CSV that came out weeks ago where they have the two BSLs on Bassett showing as still bead eligible. The
Right.
problem is that when you cross-reference the gap application, Comcast exempted a bunch of locations, which MBI isn't noting on their bead list. So there was a mismatch, and I called that out to them months ago at this point and said, can you please explain this? I've asked Comcast to confirm which BSLs they're serving. We can't get an MBI to answer that question or get Comcast to confirm whether they were overridden by MBI and forced to serve the ones that they put in as exempt.
Okay, so but basically we're looking at bead only essentially here.
This is the quote unquote bead only, but this assumes the gap winner serves all these locations, but includes some that they exempted in the map we already presented from Comcast.
Right. Okay.
So it's really
Yeah,
you can really see it over in the Sagamore area, because that's where a lot of the exempted locations are.
I am going to try
Sagamore
to
Beach and
pull
Sagamore.
this latest map up just so it gets on the TV recording, and I'm trying to get my share screen up here.
Yeah, I looked at it. Yes.
Okay.
So, given their track record of mismatching data sets when they merge, that's why I was asking, okay, so, these 20 minus 16 locations that Comcast said they're not going to reach, what's going on? Because those should be in the bead list, and because the gap awardee is not going to serve them.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah, that's the map. That's the one I was looking at. I was going, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically a visualization of the CSV we had weeks ago when we first saw that there was problems.
But again, that's what
I
they
have a-
presented to
I
their
have a
board.
question, Brian. In the original bead documents, those people got funded in gap don't get funding in bead, weren't eligible, or are eligible?
In all federal programs that have ever happened, if you receive federal funding to a location, that location is no longer eligible in any future federal funds-based program of any kind.
So if they're covered by gap, bead won't give them a dime.
Or the other way around, if they're covered by bead, because bead was the first.
Yeah.
But
No,
they changed
gap was
the rules.
first.
So
Oh,
I
okay.
guess
Gap was first.
I guess I don't understand. If they've changed the rules and said bead money, that was still originally in the bead grant process?
No,
those
so what they've
locations?
done,
So if they've
is
changed
this is gap money. This is not bead money. This is gap money they're using to fill in the locations we want under bead.
That doesn't make sense.
No
That's
kidding.
correct.
If they change
makes
the
sense.
rule, but if they change the rules for bead, why aren't they adhering to what was identified as underserved and unserved in the bead program? If they're using that money.
I think your question, you got the order of operations swapped here. So I think what you're asking me is, okay, they can change bead now because bead rules are still at play. Why aren't they adhering to gap rules? Because gap came first. I want to make sure I understand the question correctly.
No, if you're eligible for BEAD money and have to adhere to the BEAD grant process, I don't understand. So they've changed the rules, right?
They
Have they changed?
changed the gap rules at the last second, like, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, when we had a conversation with Aldino.
Okay,
They
yeah,
have
yeah, yeah,
verbally
yeah.
changed the rule and they haven't published them yet, but they verbally have said we're changing the gap rules such that anything we discovered in the BEAD challenge is going to get funded under the gap rules. So this would require
Okay, that's
change.
where, okay, that's the disconnect I didn't adhere
Yeah.
to.
Yeah,
I thought
you'd
it
have to change
was,
both gap and BEAD documents to make this lawful. They would have had to change the BEAD challenge rules to note that this is possible. They would have had to warn towns a year ago that this was a possibility, that we might divert BEAD unlocked locations into gap, because this would change the process for every single town that attempted to do the challenge. So this all should have been disclosed like a year ago, not 2 weeks ago, not 3 weeks ago, not
And
uh,
not in random phone calls that they happen to mention it when some of the applicant municipalities happen to be talking to them.
Right.
No, this isn't
So-
something
so
that
the-
can be announced or anything.
So,
So
so
to-
let me see if I can get this right, because I think there's another part that we're not explaining, which is that what MBI did was said, hey, all those who want to apply for a gap grant, based on the data that we submitted, and we had all these underserved locations. Sorry, if you weren't granted any money under BEAD, you're not eligible for a gap grant. In other words, they're saying that since Comcast was the only one to be awarded any BEAD money in Bourne, the only one that can be awarded any gap money, and this is a large sum for gap, is Comcast. They basically have eliminated the competition by saying game is over, even though the series just started.
no, I understand
Yes.
that. So, but
I
that's,
think it's
So
One
that's
at a
not
time,
It's
what
the other
was,
way around.
Henry first.
that's not what was told to MJ. And I can follow up with MJ on exactly what MBI said, but
Brian, do
But
I
no
have that
word-
right?
But
Based on
what she said was they would have to adhere to BEAD programming if they're using that money, if they're given that.
And the
What?
BEAD,
So-
yeah, but the BEAD rule says that they can't use BEAD money if there's gap
Correct.
money applied.
That's
that
what
is-
I
Yeah,
was
this
asking.
won't.
Was
Yeah,
that
is
in
and
the
this is
original
not what
BEAD?
Baldino told us.
That's what I
Baldino
was
told me
asking.
People at
directly.
home,
He's
one at a
increased.
time. I'll recognize people only. And
Sorry.
Anne Marie, are you more or less finished with your statement?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. Okay.
Was
Who'd
that
like to
originally
answer
in
that?
the BEAD grant process, that gap,
No.
if you awarded gap monies, you then couldn't use that money for those service areas that were being serviced under gap grant?
Correct.
Correct. But
Sort
it's
of.
on a per BSL basis. So that was, yes. So in BEAD, it says if you win gap, you can't bid on it in BEAD. So they've effectively taken these locations from the BEAD process that we won in the BEAD process and retroactively applying it to gap and so it decreases the pool of people that could have bid on it, because, hey, why are we going to build in Bourne for 16 or 20 locations? Why are we building in Bourne? But then all of a sudden so they only got like 2 gap applications, Verizon and Comcast. But then all of a sudden, Bourne now has a whole BSL that got unlocked under the BEAD challenge, and it's retroactively being applied to gap, where we had almost nobody bid on it. So, A, I don't know how it's legal. B, it's illogical. C, it should have been published and disclosed far enough in advance that there's public comment about this. D, the town should have been asked prior to it being the 11th hour. There's nothing right about this, and I don't even know how it's legal.
It probably isn't, but I think if they are, and I think Bob's word disingenuous is very polite, and God bless you for it. But if they are being disingenuous in letting people believe that adhering to BEAD rules means that BEAD money is going to go to gap places or vice versa. That's not true. It can't be true because, as Brian said, the Fed rules say that if there's any money applied, like from gap to a place, then no federal money ever can go there. Did I get that right?
Yes, and Baldino said this to me, and specifically, he said he's and like Baldino misleads by limiting the information he reveals. So his exact words were, I am increasing the gap award to include the locations discovered in the BEAD challenge.
Yeah.
So he speaks like a lawyer, so you have to pick it apart. He is applying gap money using BEAD challenge rules, so that statement he could have told someone is not a lie when he says under the BEAD money they have to apply BEAD rules, but you're only getting now 2 BEAD locations according to his list. That's incorrectly done here, and all the money's applying are gap. So it's gap rules are the money's rules based on what he said specifically to me and Bob, and the tech council was on the call. Retired tech council person now that Smith is retiring, and so he could have said that BEAD money has to get BEAD rules, sure, but he's applying the money using gap rules, not BEAD rules.
But didn't this new ruling also basically rule out anybody that hadn't got a BEAD grant from getting a gap grant? Is that correct?
Not only rule out anybody, it only allowed it to the one they were going to designate for gap based under the gap rules for the 16 locations and the apps for the 16 locations.
Right, not how many locations did we have? Was it like 800 or whatever?
1,700.
Okay, so none of that stuff is covered under any of this at all. In other words, from what you're saying, there's no impetus for Comcast, assuming that they're the only awardee here, to have to serve those underserved locations because it wasn't in the original BEAD locations. Is that correct?
The locations that were added, the 1,700, aren't in the original gap locations. So the original gap list only had, it was like either 16 or 20 locations.
But I thought that our locations were accepted.
Yes, under the BEAD challenge, the NTIA accepted the 1,700 locations, but MBI is the one opting to shift the BEAD locations into gap.
Okay, and nobody can bid on gap but Comcast because they're the only ones that won a BEAD grant. Is that correct?
They're the only ones who are tentatively awarded the gap grant in Bourne. So they're the only ones that can get our BEAD unlocked locations.
Right. And how do they explain the fact that they are not opening the gap grant process to other ISPs?
That is an excellent question. It is not one of the questions I put it under the BEAD questions list because technically that's a gap question.
The verbal
write that. That's another good question, John. That's to add to the list to MBI. I don't know what rules allow them to do this.
That's where I think that our municipal government should make an objection. That's all. It's just clearly simple that we're not opening this up to competition.
Mm-hmm.
So they basically decided early on, after we went to all the work of creating all the documentation to underserved areas, they're saying, well, no, that doesn't really matter, and no one else can bid on it because Comcast was awarded a $37,000 bid early on under BEAD, whereas the real money is gap money, correct? That's where we talked about a huge amount.
Yeah, we had always thought BEAD was going to be the big dollars, because we knew we were going to make a big CAI play. We knew we were going to go try for some area challenges. And so gap, arguably didn't matter that much because it was 16 locations. What's the harm? And then because we're going to make the big play in BEAD, and then that's where the money was going to come to Bourne was BEAD. So that was the strategy. if we had known that there was a risk that all of our beadwork would evaporate and go to the gap winner, I think we would have unanimously not written a letter supporting a plan that could allow that. If we had known that the rules would change, you can't really predict the future, but you do the best you can with the info you had, and the info we had said that this was impossible.
Well, going back to the letters of support, if you recall, this is in December of 23. The question was, there were going to be these gap grants. The companies, if they were going to submit an application for a town, they needed a letter of support. And the decision, of course, was that we had to be agnostic about that and provide letters of support to any company who came to us for them, and we got exactly two. And again, we put a lot of conditions, especially in the Comcast letter. And again, the timing here, this is for anybody who's on TV and is trying to catch up with this very complex situation. They awarded nothing to Bourne, to either company, for gap round one. There were several towns that won. Verizon won in Barnstable County and a number of other places, and Comcast won in other areas. In gap round two, Comcast was awarded a $24,000 grant, and their application cherry-picked 4 of the 16 unserved locations that had been identified, and just blanket declared the other 12 as ineligible, I think is the official term. No explanation given, no reason why. From the map, it looks like the 4 that they named were very close to places that they had. I don't know what you call in coax cable, call it middle mile, but they had close connections, and they would be very easy to serve. So 24,000 or 30,000 divided by 4 is not a huge amount of money for an individual connection. And then after that, we got into the situation we're in now. Again, a lot of these changes in rules were not justified, not documented. There were unwritten management changes to the rules, and in my opinion, giving millions of dollars of an add-on to a $24,000 grant has to violate some sort of state procurement rule or federal procurement rule. That's my humble opinion, having done this kind of contracting for 50 years. Anyway, okay.
So I have a quick question. Our original letter of support to Comcast had some very specific requirements.
Conditions. Yes, they did.
Yeah, and I mean, Jed can speak more knowledgeably about that, but it had to do with the number of splits and the bandwidth and everything else. And have they made clear that they would be able to meet those conditions?
No, and in fact, Brian, and along with Tony and a little other editorial help, just drafted the document I sent to you all yesterday, essentially documenting why what they appear to be offering in their Gap 2 grant, and which will expand to a very large grant, doesn't meet the specifications we put out. Jed, have you had a chance to look at that?
Yeah, I read the letter. Yep.
Yeah, in terms of just discussing what we're offered versus what we wanted, does that give you're in kind of an impartial reviewer of that? Does that give a fair indication of what the deficiencies are?
Well, yeah, I mean, it talks. I mean, in terms of what we're offered, yes. I mean, we're pretty low on the technology spectrum with respect to what Comcast could offer. But they just choose not to, presumably because they don't have to, based on the lack of competition in town.
And it's cheap for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at other places where it's highly competitive, they offer a much different technology.
Also, I'm not sure, based on what I've seen in terms of the current deployment of some of the actual coax, that they would even have the ability to do it without having to refurbish some of their existing
Yeah,
coax.
Oh.
Because if you look at some of the stuff down there, it really
totally.
is.
Oh, yeah, totally. So it isn't that
Yeah.
they don't have the technology available to them to deploy. It's that they lack the interest or the will to do it.
Or the competitive pressure, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, the
Yes.
competitive
Yeah.
pressure. I mean, there
Mhm.
was another report I saw, I think it was the FCC recently. It continues to say the same thing, which is wherever there's strong competition, the prices go way down and the quality of the service goes way up.
Mhm.
It's been
So
consistent in every place.
does that leave us with the idea that the select board should withdraw that letter of support because they're not doing what they told us they were going to do? And if we think that MBI is going to bury that, or it's going to disappear, or other people aren't going to ever see it so they can move forward with their plan, I think we copy it to the known universe so they don't have the excuse of that.
Anne
Sorry,
Marie,
Bob, can I go?
go ahead. Yep. Anne Marie, you're recognized.
I don't think withdrawing the letter is going to work in our favor anymore because I think that's a little leverage in what they're going to be doing in this community and using that money. I think we have leverage there. I think as a town, we can have some leverage when they start doing this work to try to get them to adhere to what our recommendations were with respects to that money. If we withdraw the letter, I think we lose that opportunity I think we lose that leverage. I think I might be grasping, but I think that's a window we need to keep open.
It's not a contract, Anne Marie. It's just a letter.
No, but it is a letter.
They're doing
It's-
work in our town. At some point, they can't do, this is, they have to notify
What-
us. They
What
have to.
leverage?
Well, my understanding is, I think Anne Marie is correct. My understanding is that if you write them a letter of support with conditions, and Brian, tell me if I'm wrong, that when they get that grant money, they have to adhere to those conditions. Is that correct?
Under GAP, the support letters were advised.
Excuse me,
Under
Brian, wasn't it the terminology that at least my reading of it was that they needed a letter of support from a town before MBI would accept a grant application from an applicant for that town.
that is a BEAD requirement, not a GAP requirement.
Indeed, it looks like it's just recommended, strongly recommended. No.
Inverted. GAP,
Okay.
GAP, they strongly recommend it. In BEAD, it's required.
Okay. Anne Marie.
That was the point I was going to make.
Okay.
It just gained them additional points, right? But the rules have all changed now. So I think, the rules are changing. They're shifting and moving with however MBI sees fit. So I just think we need to keep it on the table, and it could become some leverage for us.
How though? Because we're going to lose the opportunity to
but
get the money under BEAD.
I think withdrawing it they're not going to get the money if we withdraw the letter.
Oh,
If
they're
we
going to
withdraw
get
the
the money,
letter,
but
they would
the
have to
question
go to
is, are they going to
Congress.
spend it
Brian
here?
first. Brian first.
If we withdraw the letter, the money, and if MBI's logic is, okay, we want to get the money out the door as fast as humanly possible, well, then say, withdraw the money from Comcast and give it to Verizon so that fiber gets built, we have competition, and we actually have working internet. And, as someone with a house in this block, I would rather the fiber come in than, Comcast upgrading to DOSIS 3.1, like that's just like
They're at 3.1 now. You mean 4?
no, not even. They wouldn't go to 4 with this grant. They would go from 3 to 3.1, or if they already have 3.1, they'll just clean it up a little bit so that it can support the 200 up plan. There's not DOSIS 4, so it's not very good. Leverage over what? We're getting nothing of value.
John, I'm going to wait for Jed to come back. I'm going to start with John with a question. In terms of what Comcast did as its upgrades in all of Falmouth, what kind of technology did they put in?
I have no idea. Jed may know. I do not know. I thought the current one, and I'm gonna have to check. I thought my current modem now is 3.1.
Mine is
I
3.0.
thought that 4 was the next jump. And with 3.1, I can tell you that what I get, and when they made us update the plans to continue the sports thing, I ended up in a slightly higher internet tier because they were offering it for actually a discount. They'll claim that you can get up to 900 down, but it's only 20 up. In reality, I have seen 900 down on very few occasions. Most of the time, it's something around 400 to 500 down. And I test frequently. It depends. Middle of the day, when a lot of people aren't home, you get 900. And DOCSIS 3.1 is, and Jed could probably attest to this, is capable of more than that in terms of its upload speeds. The problem is how Comcast apportions the frequencies that are involved and the bandwidth that they have on their existing system may limit that. So there's a huge block of frequencies, and they decide, okay, this block is going to be for download, this block is for upload, this block is for information exchange, and how they do that, it can affect what your upload and download speed is. But it's also affected by the fact that if they have limited facilities, in other words, if their physical cable or amplifiers can only handle a certain bandwidth, no matter what they do, there's going to be a limitation.
Jed, I'm going to get Jed caught up here for a
Yeah.
second, then I'll recognize Brian. Jed, the question on the floor is, what did Comcast do in terms of their upgrades recently in Falmouth to compete with the threat of Verizon coming in?
Right. So they basically went to DOCSIS 4. They didn't do a whole lot, basically, because they haven't gone to the mid splits. They haven't offered the higher upstream bandwidth. So they basically just went to DOCSIS 4. I think they're still on 1.0 or 1.2 gig spectrum.
Okay.
So they can move to the DOCSIS 4 modem, but not upgrade the rest of the network to the max capability. So sometimes they roll DOCSIS 4 modems, but not DOCSIS 4 fully capable nodes.
Right.
Just my observation is they did that without any grant money. They did that completely out of their own
Okay.
investment. Okay, and my question, and Anne Marie, this would be one to the select board, kind of prior to withdrawing our letter of support, is why not Bourne? Okay, why doesn't Bourne get exactly the same upgrades as Falmouth? Especially since you're going to get a huge subsidy, presumably, if we have no other influence of it. Why don't we get the same level of service town-wide with the subsidy of millions of dollars that you're going to get under the augmented gap 2, if you want to call it that, presumably.
So
Brian, go ahead.
I got to clarify something there. So in Falmouth, they didn't get any grant. They still went to 2 gig down, 200 up, which, is up around the limit of 3.1. They could have done it with 4 and just not upgraded the network. And they're asking for grant money to do the same in Bourne, where they're, either they're rolling it to 2 gig down and 200 up, but they want the money to do it and they want to block this area from grant funding for any future grant. So it's not apples to apples. Like they did it without any help in Falmouth, and that's not even a good upgrade. Like I'd still not be happy with 2 gig down and 200 up. You having a house in this location, it's still out of date when they have the ability to do DOCSIS 4 at 10 down, kind of speeds that are actually starting to be competitive with fiber, not exceeding, but very competitive at the high end of what they can do. That's not what we're getting here. So, even if it's on par with Falmouth did it without money, and it's not even good, like a good upgrade.
So the short answer is Bourne is the redheaded stepchild once again. We don't get a good upgrade. We don't get the BEAD money because they're going to upgrade the stuff under GAP, and we don't even get good service. And they block
Yeah.
us from ever getting BEAD or whatever comes in the future from the feds, that it either replenishes BEAD or is a new program, because they upgraded our GAP via GAP. Is that how the process looks here? And that's why we need to withdraw this letter of support. It gives us no leverage at all. It is not a contract. And they can do whatever they want as soon as they get that GAP money. And if they get a big slug of money from BEAD, they're not obligated to spend it here.
The only one who has leverage is on Comcast is MBI, and we need to send a clear message to MBI. We don't support this plan. You had a better plan on the table, and you should have taken that. Verizon plan was better.
Brian, just
Yep.
summarize what Verizon was proposing under their GAP 2 application.
Verizon, for the 16 or 20 odd locations that were the gap unserved and underserved, they proposed building GPON 1 gig symmetrical fiber to all of the locations, including Bass's Island, there was no exempted locations whatsoever.
And they were going to, this is similar to what they're doing with their own funds in terms of expanding down to, from the canal down to Monument Beach, correct?
Yeah, it's the same tech, but the nice thing about fiber is you essentially get, bigger, more expensive lasers on either end and upgrade it. So once the fiber's there, they can always come back later. It's GPON now, but that same fiber can do,
On and on up.
yeah, you could throw some Nokia 50 gig PON on the same thing with a splitter and a little bit of, coexistence elements and whatnot, and you can make it all work together with the same exact fibers. So it's just, upgrade the lasers and go. Assuming it's PON compatible. There's a few technical things about making sure it's compatible with like the splitters and all that, but you basically upgrade your lasers and go. So yeah, the stuff they're rolling out the rest of Bourne, they already have in Buzzards Bay. They were prepared to roll that to 100% of the unserved locations. Thus, if they were the designated awardee for GAP, they would have also had to deliver the same service to all of the locations we unlocked in BEAD. Whether this is lawful or not, that's another conversation. But under the same circumstances, Verizon would have had to build fiber to all these locations.
Okay.
And
Well,
it may have taken a little longer to get it. And I understand the urge to get
No,
something.
not even. The
Not even?
No, same, not even. They would have had to roll it
Okay.
within the same 2 years, so it would not make a particle of difference in time.
Awesome.
one of the
Given
arguments that
Verizon is already
Baldino,
lit, nearby, they could start roll it's basically, and they control the poles, which it means they could do it faster than Comcast could do it, because there's no reason for them to delay a pole application on a pole they own. So they would, put their own pole application in, notify the co-owner, National Grid, notify the co-owning electrical company, send a survey out, figure out what poles are bad, start upgrading those poles, and then start laying fiber. They could be done faster than Comcast could be.
what the argument that Baldino made to Brian, me, and Steve Smith of the Tech Council on, January 17th in a conversation was that without having to bid any of the BEAD money for these BEAD locations, the number is irrelevant here. Without having to bid that, he could turn the money around much quicker, and it'd be completed much quicker than if by just giving it directly to Comcast than if he had to put it out for bid. And again, as Brian just said, there's still the
Not
same
true.
limit. Any company that bid has to get this done by December of 26.
Under GAP
GAP.
has a shorter time frame than BEAD.
Right.
So they lied.
Correct. That's a lie. If they had picked Verizon, was under the same time pressure as as Comcast. And the way MBI always does it, they don't lie. They just withhold information. They said
Obfuscate.
they applying this under GAAP has correct that it has a tighter time frame than BEAD. So if they didn't finish the sentence and explain all the context, it is not a lie. But in common parlance, they're withholding information that was necessary to understand what they were saying.
So do we think we can get the select board or MJ in particular to address this issue again with some clarity and just say to Mr. Baldino or whomever, what is preventing Verizon or Open Cape from bidding on these same locations and this same grant money?
Or is it too late?
Yeah. I mean, I thought the deadline was March something for letters of support.
March is for BEAD. So Baldino is putting a gun to our head by trying to force us into this Comcast app and then put us in a position where no one could bid on this in BEAD. So every minute we delay is further making this impossible to fix.
What's going on right now is that for BEAD, presumably, we know at least two companies and probably Open Cape are preparing applications to fill in all of the to connect all of the dots that were on the map I just had up. Okay, and what's the deadline for them submitting a BEAD application for those locations, Brian?
Like 28, 29. It's end of the month, whereas
the end of the
support
month,
letter,
and with a 10-day grace period for them to get letters of support from the towns that they're approaching. They're promising to serve. So in terms of Verizon, it may already be too late. For them to come in, if they haven't started preparing an application, I don't know exactly, how the grant preparation works inside these companies, but they had months to prepare GAAP. I know that.
well, they have a gap in. So under the same logic, you could just divert the money to Verizon under GAAP. Simple. The town doesn't support what you're proposing here and would like you to do it under Verizon. That's an option. That is a play we could debate. That is one of the plays to run here. Whether it will work or not, no one knows because they've changed the rules ex post facto. If they can change the rules ex post facto, what's stopping them to divert the money back to Verizon?
That is true. Anne Marie, a question for you, if you can unmute. What are we looking at for future meetings of the select board? Either scheduled meetings, or I know there's a sewer commissioner meeting up there, and there's a possibility, I guess, to ask MJ for a 5-minute or a 10-minute side meeting of the select board to convene the select board to discuss this and talk about options.
We do have a sewer commissioners meeting, but we don't usually combine select, in extenuating circumstances, we might have a select board meeting prior to or after a sewer commissioners meeting, but our next select board meeting is March 4th.
Too late.
Is March 4th.
Okay.
This sounds like
late.
extenuating circumstances when you're talking about this kind of money and this kind of service.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But it's highly unlikely that one agenda item will be placed and have a select board meeting coinciding with a sewer commissioners meeting.
And that serves the town how?
It doesn't.
Bingo.
This could be 50 years of damage because blocking all future grants, maybe longer, depends on how long, when do they decide, okay, we're sunsetting the rule so that, the first rural grants from, 5 or 10 years ago get upgraded to, they can get money to upgrade lasers, 100 years from now. I don't even know, it could be 50 or more plus years of harm.
Okay, what's the sense of the meeting? Would you like me to to communicate with MJ and ask for, under the extenuating circumstances of a February 28th deadline, to write a letter to Baldino and ask them to open the competition to both companies, given that they have gap proposals gap 2 proposals from both companies. I mean, that's really the only option here. If he's intent on giving this out under gap, awarding the extra money under gap, then a contact from the select board asking him to open the competition, to relook at the gap 2 awards, and compare, in the light of the 1,700 extra locations they propose to serve, to open that to both and reevaluate the gap 2 grants in that light, something like that. I don't see another option. And essentially threaten failing to do that. We're going to send you a letter, and after we communicate, and withdraw the letter of support to Comcast. Anne Marie, I'm sorry.
So we withdraw the letter of support. That still doesn't negate Comcast from getting the money, does it?
Well, the first request would be to ask MBI to reevaluate the gap 2 proposals, and they have 2. They have one from Comcast, one from Verizon, in the light of the 1,700 extra locations that they plan to fund under gap 2. Okay, and reevaluate that in terms of the better competitiveness for the 2 companies. And then if we win there and they just open the competition, fine. If they don't, or they refuse, then say, well, given that, and given the lack of competition under gap 2, the town will withdraw our letter of support. Threaten to, not do it.
So it's a lot of words. That for the 2 outcomes here are, the town asks MBI to divert the money to Verizon under gap, or to reopen the locations to bidding under BEAD.
Brian, I would reword it another way. Again, I'm stepping down from the chair here, but it's going to come from me anyway, at least to MJ. Reword it first to say, to reopen or reevaluate the gap 2 proposals submitted by the 2 companies, in the light of the additional 1,700 un- and underserved locations that were identified in Bourne.
Well,
Okay.
it won't work because of the cost focus of the MBI formula. So they'll reevaluate it and re-award it to Comcast if you word it that way.
Okay.
And we're assuming that Verizon wants to do this, right?
Well, we haven't
Verizon put an app
requested.
in. They're requesting the gap unserved, and so they do want to do this. And if MBI is changing the rules so that they get more locations under the same terms, gap is arguably better grant to win it under, due to a few factors. So yeah, they put in the app asking for gap for the 16. And it's a contiguous block, so it's a good win for a fiber builder, because you're getting like a lot of places all on one go, so they can plan their marketing for a whole region. They can roll a whole crew to do the passings, and then separately to do the home installs. They can get some economies of scale, which other providers have had trouble with because they can just bang it out all in one go. So it's a good. I can't foresee a reason why they wouldn't take it.
Not
It
only
would be
that, at least for
attractive to
this,
them on that basis. Even.
with the census block grant, their network becomes contiguous from Monument Beach all the way down to the Falmouth border, where they will start serving under the Falmouth grant that they proposed. Not only
And like
proposed, but won.
the layout was they were going to the worst locations too, which that was the point of Gap. Like you got to take the Gap money, you got to go to the worst location. That's Bass's Island. So they were going to build out both Wings Neck and Scraggy with laterals. I think they're planning to come into it from two sides. I can't remember exactly. I can pull it up, but they were building out wings to cross where I was predicting the crossing would be. And they're building out into Scraggy. So like they already had to build laterals into this zone anyway. So you basically tell the crew just keep going. It's
Okay.
from that point of view, it's great. You know,
Again,
they speak for them, but it's a great.
again, we are speaking for them. So I think the appropriate point would be, again, these are all MJ is very good at making some of these calls. I think a call to first Verizon to say that if the competition were reopened or your GAP grant were reevaluated, would you reprice it, given the 1,700 underserved and unserved in the that were identified under BEAD? Yes or no. If the answer is no, they don't have time or whatever, then we're dead in the water. If the answer is yes, then Comcast should I'm sorry, MJ should contact first MBI and say, we want you to reopen the competition for GAP 2. And in the light of Verizon's willingness to serve those potentially at a lower price than Comcast could. And then failing that, just threaten with Baldino, well, we're going to potentially withdraw our letter of support. We'll notify your board of that. And you know, we'll see where that let the chips fall where they may. I don't know what else to do, to be honest. That's just my humble suggestion.
Yeah, we're better off not getting an award at all than getting the Comcast deal. That's how catastrophic this is as far as any future grant. You know, the different administration down the road, you know, whatever is blocked out. You know, we're blocked out from all opportunities here if we take it. So we're better off dropping the ball and not getting nothing than taking this.
Verizon already has indicated that they want to stretch fiber over the whole Cape, and it's going to be a long process. They said on their call with Falmouth, or at least related from the call, their discussions with Falmouth Net and the MBI board, and the light plant board, was that they would work first to deal with their grants, and they have several on the Cape, between now and 2026, and then after that they would move forward and deal with the rest of the town over the next, I don't know, decade. If they probably would want to serve Bourne at some point, but they may well overbuild on top of Comcast, but that might be more than 10 years out. In any case, I need guidance from the committee. Tell me what to do. We have some short-term opportunities and short-term big threats here. And if you want me to do the contact that I just discussed, I'll do that verbally with an email to all select board asking for a meeting, and I'll call MJ beforehand and discuss this strategy going forward. So one is contact Verizon to find out, would they be willing to reapply under GAP 2 if that were suspended and delayed for extra money? Brian, shake your
It's
head.
not real. That's it. So the legalese is going to get you all tripped up. So they can't reapply under GAP 2. The GAP application is in. So it's more saying, you know, if Comcast Gap 2 application was to be denied, would you accept the increased award for the additional location under Gap 2? So it's not rebidding, it's just would you accept the additional money? They have had this conversation already with MBI, sort of. I found a second census block group that was challenged successfully, and way out in Western Mass. Actually, a whole town successfully got challenged. It was weird too. MBI put the challenges in and challenged the town. It's very strange. I don't know how it occurred, but it did. And so the whole town got challenged basically. And so they had a Verizon award. And so the newly unlocked locations under BEAD are being awarded to Verizon. So they have already, had the conversation with MBI on what terms do these awards get increased. So you can almost skip part of that and just say, hey, we saw what happened out in, I'll get you the name of the town in a second. It's almost to the edge of the state. And, would you want the same thing to happen to you in Bourne if Comcast's GAP grant was blocked?
Brian, go through that again. I got lost there.
So there's a second town that succeeded in area challenge. I found it very recently working with, but I got questions from one of the Western Mass planning councils, because MBI wasn't helping them, so I helped them. And they pointed out a town had gotten an area challenge that I hadn't noticed. And so one of the towns of Western Mass had 3 or 4 census block groups got challenged. They already had a GAP award to Verizon for dozens, 100 locations. Actually, I saw the list. It was 98 locations. And so the same thing happened, hey, we challenged under BEAD. Actually, MBI even entered the challenge, and Connected Nation entered some challenges. It was weird looking. I don't know how they pulled it off and under what circumstances, but an area challenge was conducted and was upheld. Verizon had already won a GAP grant in that town, and so Verizon's GAP grant award is getting increased to cover those additional locations. So, they already know the drill with MBI for a GAP grant being increased in size.
Okay, perhaps we need to talk to them. Real quick, just because Anne Marie's got to leave in about 5 minutes here, I'm just conscious of what she had communicated before. Anne Marie, one item further down the agenda is a draft letter to basically it's to Comcast again, our favorite company, over the fact that they violated the cable TV license rules by increasing these prices for New England Sports Network and NBC Sports, etc. Without giving 30-day advance notice. They notified the town after they had already started ceasing to offer the service to residents. So we have a draft letter that's going to go to the select board, and that's a separate item.
I read that. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Just to let you know, I don't want those confounded by the select board because this is one of a million things they have to deal with, but that's one that is probably going to get submitted to the select board after the dust settles a little on this.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
non-urgent.
Yeah.
Everybody agree that that's non-urgent, getting people.
Yeah, I just think that we have, we are supposed to respond to our fellow residents, and this was brought up to us not only during the meeting we had last week, but also by email. So
right.
We
Yeah.
might have to actually reach out to the Department of Telecommunications, because I was doing a little digging, and sometimes the enforcement is often done by the Department of Telecommunications. So we need to call them and ask them how that works, because the penalties here could be more significant than just a month's fees reduced. So we should reach out to the Department of Telecom, see what resources they have, whether they can handle that, once notified by the town and whatnot, so we can gather that information and make an informed decision on what to do about that.
would we do that, or would somebody from the town officially do that, Anne Marie?
That would be us.
I'm not sure.
Well,
Cable
if we're
committee-
gathering information, we can do it. That's my particular view of our role.
So
And
what,
then we report back to the select board about what we can and can't do and what the select board has to do and what they can do. Is that a fair précis of exactly what the way forward here is on that?
Yeah, if it's just data collecting, that's fine.
Okay, so for your information, Anne Marie, before you leave, we'll discuss it further down below about how to do it, but we'll approach the Department of Telecommunications on that. And we have a draft letter, and that might be modified based on that information. Then we'll make send the letter and draft
right.
letter and make a recommendation to the select board about what to do.
Okay.
Okay, we will, in the course of this, we will report that we've spotted an apparent violation of our contract with Comcast, and we want guidance on how to go forward under the law.
Correct.
Okay, very good. We're still going to be continuing, Anne Marie, I know you got to leave now. We're still going to continue debate about this, and I will call you to let you know what we've decided, and then again contact MJ one way or the other about this in
Okay.
terms of a way forward. It's very complex. Again,
it's just so many, it's a juggling act, right?
oh,
And
you
it's
know,
so it's so
a lot of money.
unpredictable
It's
right
highly, it's frankly, there's some politics in here that we're not aware of, but that's always the case. And we'll go from there.
But I just think the important thing is that MJ should ask, why are these other companies being excluded from a competitive bidding process? That I think is the important point that will make everybody crazy. And I want to hear what the official answer is.
Again, Baldino is a lawyer, and I think the pointed question is this in full compliance with state and federal laws and regulations? Okay, that
And-
will scare the bejesus out of any lawyer. Okay, it should. Okay, because he's got to then defend his client against a potential accusation like that. Okay, this is something that I've got authorization to communicate with the chair of the select board, either to get on an expedited meeting or to ask her to begin conversations with both MBI, maybe Verizon, to see if they're still in play here, and also Comcast if need be too. Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know where this is going, but hang on for the ride. Very complex.
Yeah, they made it too complex, which has been a common complaint by many towns that, there's probably 3 people in the state that understand these rules. Sean Gross, myself, and one other reporter.
Look,
It's a
there are
feature, not a
telecom
bug.
lawyers out there, among some of the served communities, shall we say, they have access to telecom lawyers who can go forward and dig into the details of exactly what authority MBI has to modify the rules, what kind of communication they have to give to the regulated community, which is all of the towns, about this. There are a lot of rules, like you change a regulation, you've got to give 30-day notice, you've got to allow comment, etc. And my personal opinion is, I'm sure there are rules there, and I'm sure they were ignored or given short shrift. Okay.
I have a quick question. For our discussion, has Verizon requested another letter of support besides the original one we did for? Okay, so the original one was a gap 1, was that correct?
They got a letter of support only for gap 1. They used it for gap 2, okay, because they submitted a proposal for gap 2. And we went forward from there. Okay. So
There's
Verizon
some language that the gap letters can be reused. We put in a bunch of clarifying questions to MBI for BEAD because it wasn't completely clear. So I put a pile of questions in, and they're due to give us answers tomorrow.
What time is the communication tomorrow, Brian?
It's a PDF we'll get out of their website, so at some point tomorrow. And we'll have to go digging where it is because the push push notifications are always delayed at least one business day, so they're not gonna push it till Monday, so I'll have to go digging tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, just for your information, I've got one quick question. I just have to see I have a med appointment for my wife at around 1 o'clock, and I'll be out of pocket for an hour or two around there. But I'm able to jump in on on this
Mhm.
any other time. Okay, let's move down the further down the agenda here. Give me 1 second to get this back up.
I got Mass Broadband Coalition.
Haven't heard anything from them.
In terms of the tech council, nothing has gone forward with that at all. The new director is Michael White, and I haven't heard anything from him. Mass Broadband Coalition was invited to the Tech Council's the State Technology Council board meeting yesterday, and I did not see him on the list of attendees. Okay, let's move further down. There has been nothing in terms of contact with other towns at all. I'm just going down the list.
So, hey, Bob, just on that front, Falmouth is basically looking to dissolve the MLP. That's basically what's going on there.
Okay,
And you did see that New England Broadband has also given up,
yes,
right? So that was basically the nail in the coffin for Falmouth.
Mm.
right. That was their only possible way forward. Going
How
back,
about with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe? Anything?
nothing with
Oh,
that.
I got an email asking to meet because they had some questions. Haven't had a chance to schedule a date. Verizon dropped out of Mashpee Town on their GAP application for some reason, and so it's up for bid on BEAD unexpectedly to them. So they're working on that.
Wendy, that was one other thing for the minutes. I apologize, but if you look back, it said that it was Mashpee Tribe had withdrawn, or had Verizon had withdrawn its service, proposed service to the Mashpee Tribe. It's to the town of Mashpee.
It's the town.
Yeah. Okay, I apologize. I missed that. Okay. Let me look at this again. There is nothing new on the fiber service to the cell tower. I have not looked at the docket before the Cape Cod Commission to see what's going on there. If anybody knows anything, I don't think we have to do anything urgently. The one thing that I heard is that the members of the golf club are going to file an objection because they think the cell tower will be distract them from putting on the third green. And not quite at that level, but
Aw,
if you,
bummer.
yeah, okay, my heart bleeds, right? And
Yeah.
just last night, I chaired the meeting of the Pecassid Village Association, and we had at least told our members, the town members on the Cape Cod Commission, Steve Mealy, we just expressed verbal approval because of the poor cell service as you get down towards the water. So we may have some conflicts there with members of the golf club, but that's life. I have nothing new on the data call-in from the on pole attachments, et cetera, by the state DPU and the Department of Telecommunications. With that, I'm going to move forward to item J, the letter from that John so nicely wrote. If anybody would care to, John, you want to pull that up and we can.
Yeah, let me see if I
discuss it
can
at
I'm
the
sorry,
get
individual-
that.
excuse me, did we skip the G for digital equity plan and implementation?
Oh,
Or is
yes,
there,
we
there's just
did.
nothing new there?
I have nothing new to report on that.
Okay. Just checking.
If I can share, here it is. So basically, after it was pointed out, when Brian pointed out that we could get it, that we could pull down a copy of the license, I did, and we were kind of waiting for Jed to chime in here because he was on the original advisory board that worked on this. Was the fact that they had to give 30 days notice, and I actually went back and checked a few things because I was mistaken. I thought I had gotten something in writing from them, and I had not. The way I found out about the change was my wife was reading the online edition of the Boston Globe and said, "Hey, you better look at this because we're both diehard sports fans." She watches the Celtics religiously, and I'm a Bruins and Red Sox fan. So that is how I knew about it. And I went back and checked because normally they will put these things in the mailing with all the bills. And I have a copy. I actually print out my bill, which I get online every month. And I went and looked all the way back to December, and there was no notice about any change regarding NESN and NBC Sports Boston. There were other changes that they mentioned, and there's some small channels that they had, and the fact that AMC Plus was going to go to $8.95 a month, but nothing about this whatsoever. So in reading over and you can see if I roll down here a little bit, this is right from the contract that basically says they got to give 30 days notice before changing anything. Am I correct in assuming that, Jed?
Yes.
Okay, so well, obviously they didn't, and we heard from one gentleman last week who joined us online who said the way he found out was trying to watch the Celtics game.
Yeah.
And when I said I as soon as I read the newspaper article, I went online to my Xfinity account, and there was an announcement when I logged in. But I got nothing in mail, and it's supposed to also said it should be distributed in a typeface that can be easily read and understood by subscribers. Well, that is not the case. So they didn't do that. So I guess at this point, what you all are saying is that I should, or one of us should try to get in touch with the Department of Telecommunications and ask them what they would recommend. I was just saying, hey, just refund everybody for the month because you changed the service without proper notice. And I thought that would be a fair and equitable thing. And I'm not trying to be, I mean, I think that locally, Mr. Gala may not have known because if you look at his letter, it predates the actual implementation by one day.
Yeah.
His letter was addressed the 14th, and so his letter was the 13th, and they did it on the 14th. And I found out about it in the paper, I think, on the 10th. So, is there any discussion about how we should pursue that?
No, I
Fines
think,
could be higher than that by a lot. Plus, because there has to be some punitive measure. So just, hey, we caught you and we got away what you made. That seems too low, in my opinion.
John, could you contact the Department of Telecom and
Yes,
just ask?
I will email them and then see what I can do.
Just ask how should enforcement proceed on this? Should it be from the just ask questions? Should it be give them the draft letter? Should it be from their department? Should it be from the licensor, which is the select board? Through this committee, because that's an official legal duty of this committee. And what financial compensation and or penalties can be assessed to the company for violating this clause in their contract?
Right. Okay, I will ask those questions. I will email them first so we can hopefully get
I
something
have
in
a
writing.
contact. I'll send you a contact when we were asking
Okay.
the Department of Telecommunications about polls. You might just call them and ask them which colleague, because otherwise you go to constituent services, and this is actually like a town asking. So I'll forward you my contact there.
Okay.
Oh,
and
that's great.
once again, I think it's always useful to CC the known universe so nobody thinks that they can bury it if they know other people are also seeing it.
Well, I think with regard to this communication, very quickly, if you don't hear back quickly on that, John, I think we can bubble this up and have the question come from either the select board or maybe the town council.
Exactly.
And it's
And
information
also,
gathering, so
right.
so we can just send a request to them if we have to the town council and ask him to make that contact if you get no response.
Okay, I will write them and see if I get a response. And I'll start with Brian's contact and just ask who I should be in touch with. And I'll dig around their website also to see, because if you look further, and Jed would know this, at the contract, it also mentions the state government. And that they also, with this type of change, there's another clause that says they also have to notify, well, it says the cable division.
Mhm.
So yeah, which is now the Department of Telecommunications. So I don't think they notified them either. They obviously notified the Boston Globe. Even then, there was not 30 days of notice.
Okay.
Or
Okay, we have
somebody,
a way forward there. I don't think we need any votes or anything like that.
okay.
By the way, this draft letter is great and it's got all the particulars and feel free to send that along to the telecommunications folks
Right.
when if and when they ask for it. Okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you have that sentence that says, for those subscribers that did, we suggest offering a credit between the old and new pricing. And I think you might want to add in something that says, the Department of Telecommunications may have rules about stricter penalties or something to that effect, because
Okay,
we
let me
don't
make
want
a note
them.
about that.
Yeah, I'm
And
poking some summaries saying it could be 500 per customer kind of things. Like, yeah, so
really,
we don't really know what the penalties are here. There's a big range.
okay. Okay, right, I'm gonna first talk to them and see what they say. And
Yeah, but don't let them think that we'd be happy with just, 1 month
well,
of free
this would be, I
service.
just was putting this as a polite letter to Comcast in a way that where they might be able to make everybody whole. I'm not sure. Again, Jed may do. I don't know what the state penalties are. I've never gotten, the only time I ever got money back from a cable company was years ago when Comcast left up some testing equipment on their Natick feed for like a weekend, and I was trying to videotape something and it screwed it all up because they were sweeping the bandwidth. And what it would do would cause an interruption to vertical sync every now and then.
Okay, well,
But,
So
so
I'll
I
just
really don't
point
know.
out, so in that contract, it points out the law that that would be used to enforce that section. Says change of service policies shall be in compliance with 207 CMR 10. I think that's a Massachusetts state law.
right. It's a CMR is regulations,
Right,
Yeah.
Commonwealth,
but
right.
they're promulgated regulations, so it's the same.
207 CMR 10.00. And it's also attached as Exhibit 6. If you want to look at that, John.
Okay,
Billing
I
and
will,
termination of
right,
service, yeah.
right, when we get off, I will look at that.
Yeah, so that's page 53 in the
Okay.
contract, Exhibit 6.
Okay. Exhibit 6, got it. Okay, I will look at all that and see what he says. Is there anything else or should I unshare this?
You can go ahead and unshare.
Okay, very good. Okay, we're unshared, so.
Did we do I poll attachment review by the DPU?
I just mentioned that that is in a period of call it a data call-in. They're requesting detailed information about not only polls but other conveyances, both the state and Department of Telecommunications.
Yeah, we had that in the previous minutes. I just didn't know if there was anything else coming.
I haven't seen anything reported out, and the companies aren't giving that out publicly, so we don't know what's going on there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't recall from that 3 or 4 page document exactly what their deadlines are or what their plan way forward was. That's probably in the Federal Register someplace, but I'm not going to go digging for it. We have very little influence on that one way or the other.
Do we
Um,
still have a federal register? Who knows?
Okay, good point. Which brings us down to new business. Um, Possible changes to the federal Internet for All program. Um, uh, Senator Cruz especially has been one that's been pressing the agency over the slowness of the program and a number of other aspects of it. And it may well be that that just gets swept up in one of these axing programs here. Musk declares by dictum, well, we're not going to pay any money for that, regardless of what the law says or the grants say, et cetera. So this whole thing may get swept up, and all of our discussions about this may be moot if that continues. If anybody knows anything else about that or hears anything, please do communicate it.
The only thing I have heard is that I have heard our president, I believe, made some comment about the fact that all these underserved areas would do well by using the Starlink system.
Oh, what a surprise.
I'm shocked.
They would struggle to handle it. So
I did some research into it,
Dawson did a
and it
good
has
one.
if you're living in the boonies and you don't have a lot of trees around your house, it's a very reasonable alternative. However, there are a lot of limitations to making it work. It's certainly not at the level of service that you could get from fiber or even coax for that matter. But
All the more reason for
so
us to have
I'm
some
not,
preferences.
yeah. So I think there's a confusion about, I can see it again, in some rural area someplace, it could be a very usable concept. Around here, I'm not sure how well it would work based on the fact of the preponderance of trees foliage we have here. I watched actually a guy installing one someplace, I think in Canada, and had to basically come up with a non-penetrating roof mount because every place and even then he had to do a lot of aiming to get it around the tall trees that surrounded this particular home.
Been there, done that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I attempted it, and that's exactly it. The angle from where we are, the angle in the sky is low enough that it hits a lot of trees. You can put a antenna on a very tall pole off the peak of your roof if you want, but at that point I just ran out of ambition.
Right, and plus you have a structural issue there with wind loading, and you get some ice and snow and wind, and it's going to rip your roof off.
Both of my kids have Starlink in rural. They're in semi-rural areas. My daughter-in-law, who occasionally has to do this kind of stuff from home, was doing it over DSL, trying to do essentially video teleconferences, et cetera, over DSL, which was a metaphysical impossibility. And they finally got Starlink, so she was able to actually sort of function. And then my daughter for our cabin in West Virginia managed to get the thing working. But she's a billy goat, and she managed to climb up to the highest peak on this cabin to get the thing installed. So it works about 90% of the time. So they now have telephone and internet connection. Speaking of telephone, if anybody was watching the Super Bowl, Starlink is offering satellite telephone service through T-Mobile. Okay.
Oh, swell.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
So for Bourne purposes, it's not it's not really a viable tech, and we should continue to maintain that it's not appropriate for Bourne. We're too dense. Tree line's an issue, angle's an issue, and if you all of a sudden put too many people onto it, there's a reason they have wait lists. It would overload the system. So, there's no real reason for federal funds to, for Bourne's purposes, go to anything but, what is appropriate for for where we are.
Would this function as a technology for, what do they call it, extreme high cost locations?
Yes.
Yes.
This is exactly what you want to talk about. You're on an island someplace, this is the ideal. I mean, I had a friend who was owned a place in the middle of on an island in Lake Winnipesaukee, and he had, I forget what he had. It was DSL. It was awful, but this would have been the ideal solution for him. You know, a place that was unreachable, and it's fine. You have to go to some work and hope you're clear of trees, but it does work. But for here, where you have a certain population density, I don't think it would be a realistic
Okay, so we're
option.
And for any
again,
listeners at home, Bassett's might not even reach the threshold of the high cost because it's not a particularly challenging one compared to a Cutty Hunk. So these ultra high cost locations are like a Cutty Hunk Island 30 miles out there that are basically impossible to reach. You know, Bassett's is just a little skip across some water. It's a different category of difficulty.
Besides, Starlink provides an awful lot of entertainment on the Bourne Facebook page. Every time somebody sees those 5 little dots going across the screen and across the sky, and they think it's the aliens. Yeah.
not to say Elon Musk isn't an alien. Anyway, so much for that.
Certainly weird.
Okay, going forward in terms of meetings,
Next date.
again, we've got some contacts I've got to make with MJ, and hopefully we are on an expedited, extenuating circumstances add-on select board meeting for next Tuesday. And I don't know when I hope the sewer commissioners is meeting next Tuesday, because she won't convene an extra meeting for that. But going forward from that, I think we ought to meet next Thursday, if that is okay.
Sure. That would be
Yeah.
what, 20th.
Okay. Jed, just to check with you, just in case we need it for 2 weeks down the line, are you going to be attending on the 27th?
Yes, I can't attend next week, but I can
Okay.
attend on the 27th, and then my Thursday's kind of clear up after that.
Okay. Just to let you know, I'm going to be totally out of pocket, maybe starting Wednesday night, the 26th, and probably for a couple of days completely. My wife has to have a planned preventative heart procedure. Okay. There's nothing wrong, but this is preventative. But she may have to go in the hospital the night before. The procedure is the morning of Thursday, the 27th, and she's in at least one full day after that. So I can't, I'll be totally out of pocket for that. So if you could share on the 27th, if there is a meeting that day.
Sure.
Okay.
So, do you want to keep the same agenda, and what are we doing with this?
I would leave that in there.
Okay.
Because, again, you turn the news on every morning and you find out what else is being attacked. I would,
Well, it's now old business.
it's now old business. I do not have any new business here.
Okay.
And
What about the rest of the list? Leave everything?
I would leave everything.
Okay.
We can go quickly through most of those. No, I think everything pretty much stays the same.
Okay.
Anybody else have any additions to that?
Oops, no.
Okay. I'll send it to Maria after the meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you, folks. I may be in touch with one or two of you with some bullet point draft notes a little later in terms of contacting MJ, requesting a meeting, requesting her to do other contacts with MBI, etc. Again, she first of all, may I have a quick vote? Does anybody have any changes to that DOCSIS 4 or DOCSIS 3.1 document that Brian exhaustively prepared?
Well, I made mine already.
Okay. If I just want to have a vote to approve, and I will send that on to the select board at an appropriate time prior to the next meeting. We've given them everything else we've got. I just want to have that on record so we can discuss that. Do I hear a motion to approve that document for inclusion in our minutes and distribution?
So moved.
Okay, Wendy moves, John seconds. Voice vote. Wendy?
Aye.
Brian?
Aye.
Okay. John?
Aye.
Jed, you've read it? You can vote?
Aye. Yeah.
Okay,
aye.
and the chair votes aye also. So that goes into our, we'll go into our minutes and it'll be available for distribution first to the select board. Again, my fear is overloading them with the technical stuff and I pointed out to MJ in the prior phone call that, again, that's why we're here. Our job is to look at all the technical stuff for them, and they don't have anybody in-house in a paid position who can do that. So we're it. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Move.
moved.
John?
Hmm.
John moves. Second, somebody?
Second.
Jed seconds. Okay. John,
Aye.
Jed,
Aye.
Brian,
Aye.
Wendy.
Aye.
Okay, and the chair, Bob, votes aye also. Okay, at what is it, 10:41? We are now adjourned. Okay, thank you all so much. I may be in contact with you folks shortly. So a couple of you, not
Okay.
a quorum.